Welcome back to the ... podcast. It's been a little while since I uploaded. I was kind of on a little bit of a kick of being consistent. And then I obviously disappeared for about a month. Reason being, I had to go back to the United States because my mother passed away kind of unexpectedly. She had battled with multiple sclerosis for 35 years, and due to some new complications that had arose, she passed away. And like I said, I went back to the States to be with family and to mourn our mutual loss and pay our respects and everything. And yeah, it's not easy. I consider myself fortunate up until this point that I'm 37 years old and I've never lost anybody. So for the first person to lose to be my mom, who I was incredibly close with, is difficult to say the least. So, but on a lighter note, one of the perks to being back in the States was I got to see my family. I got to see my wife and my kids and everybody I care about, my dad, my sister, all my extended family. And I definitely took advantage of the opportunity to do my first in-person podcast. And I sat down with my beautiful wife, Lacey, and kind of got her to spill her guts about who she is and where she came from and all that kind of stuff. And this is going to kind of serve as an introduction to her. And I'm sure we will have her back on repeatedly as we pick apart some different aspects of her perspective on things, because she definitely has a very outstanding and unique and great perspective on just about everything that I talked to her about. So without further ado, the love of my life, my smoking hot wife, Lacey. Okay, are you ready?
Red eye.
Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Are you comfortable?
Sure.
Is there anything I could do to make you more comfortable?
No.
Is there anything I could do to make you uncomfortable?
Probably.
Well, let's start off with some unique icebreaker questions geared only at you.
Okay.
Why are you so hot?
Stop.
Favorite non-satanic metal band?
Non-satanic?
That was meant to be funny, but now you're really having to sift between.
August Burns Red.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Best joke you've ever heard, go.
It's really offensive.
Real bad?
It's pretty bad.
Is it the one about Sarah Palin?
It is.
Then we won't put it in here.
Okay.
I'm glad I knew that.
Are you going to introduce me?
I already did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
When?
I'll do it later.
Okay.
Haven't you listened? You haven't listened to my podcast,
I have.
have you?
You do the intro with yourself, and then you do the thing.
Okay, last question.
I'm sorry.
Do you want to make out?
No.
Okay, that's honest. Okay, so the real icebreaker questions for you. Favorite place you've ever been?
Thailand. But living in Japan is a close second.
What was it about Thailand that was so spectacular?
I got to spend a day with elephants.
Elephants. Okay, I would agree. I loved it there.
Mm-hmm.
That was good times. Do aliens exist? It was a sensitive subject.
Mm-mm.
Just absolutely no.
I mean, they might, but I don't care because it'll never affect my life.
Just completely. I'm going to go ahead and address the cuckoo in the room. There is a cuckoo clock that I bought Lacey for like an anniversary or Christmas or a birthday or something like that. And you'll hear it pop in on the half hour and on the hour. So the one chirp is on a half hour, and then we got a real. Oh wait, it's only gonna be 1 o'clock, so I'm only just do it once.
Right.
So okay,
it's not,
I thought we were
not noon.
Yeah, I was like, woo! We're gonna have to take a big time out for that. So yeah, look forward to that. Next question: celebrity that you can answer this one of two ways, that you want to hang out with or that you most identify with?
Paul Rudd.
Dang it, I knew you were going to say that. These are things I already know about you, I guess.
Know. Yeah, I would love to hang out with Paul Rudd.
Why? Is it because he's attractive? He's more attractive than me?
He's conventionally attractive. He's not like Thor handsome, you know? He's not like
me. So
he's not super muscly, blonde hair, blue eyes. He's not your typical like.
Well, neither am I.
Right, but we're not talking about you. We're talking about Paul Rudd. He's like your boy next door handsome, but he's hilarious. He appears. I mean, I don't personally know him, but he appears to have a great personality. He also loves music, good music. There was recently a clip of him like rocking out to the Foo Fighters, and I was like,
you showed me that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, as if I couldn't love you anymore. I love you more now.
And I like Paul Rudd. I can't talk. I like Paul Rudd a lot too. So I guess if there's somebody that I'm going to give you is this a hall pass?
Do I get a hall pass? That's what I'm wondering.
I just said hang out, but you're like, you just lit up over the prospect of a hall pass with Paul Rudd.
I don't know if I could take the hall pass. I just got excited because I would think he would be giving himself a pep talk prior to
from Wanderlust.
Yeah.
You gonna take it, Eva? You gonna take it, Lacey?
So that made me I could go
You could put yourself there all of a
just
sudden.
on the other side of the mirror to see him pep talking himself.
Would that make you like lose interest though at that point?
No.
Wow. Would it get you revved up?
I would probably pee myself.
I'm only asking because I could put the similar types of things in my tool belt to see if maybe I could spice up things for us a little bit.
Oh, sure. Go for it.
Okay. Just you wait.
Challenged.
All right. So now let's consider, or I want you to paint me the picture of your life in 3 minutes or less. But hopefully it takes 3 minutes. I want a little detail.
I thought about this when you do your other interviews. You should actually time people.
Okay, I don't recall asking for a critique. I just said, give me your life in 3 minutes.
Okay. I grew up in a small town in Missouri called Republic, Missouri. My parents divorced when I was around 7, and my mom kind of pieced out. And so my dad got custody of me and my brother. I have 2 younger brothers. I have a half brother, which is by a different dad of my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, that made sense, right? That wasn't backwards.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my half brother, Jesse. And then I have my younger brother, Josie, and that's my dad's other kid. So it's me and my brother, Josie, are full brothers and sisters.
Your biological brother.
My biological, yeah, thank you.
Fancy words.
Yes. Anyway, so my dad took custody of me and my brother, Josie, and my grandparents stepped in to help him raise us because he had to work all the time and childcare is expensive. So I was kind of raised in a community with my dad and my grandma and my grandpa and my 7 cousins and my aunts and uncles. So I did that. I graduated from a public high school. Didn't really know what I was going to do. I went to school for like 3 different things at one point in time and just decided that none of those things were for me. And then I met you and we got hitched and you joined the military and I followed you and we had kids and here we are.
Somewhere in there, was there any romance? Because it does just sound like we just got hitched. I think we had a pretty good courtship, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah. Lots of Taco Bell and...
Oh, she's going to downplay. Here comes the princess.
No, we kept together. You and I kept Taco Bell in business when we were dating.
We did.
I mean, we still do.
We still do. I still would. Mm. I don't really want some fire sauce and a burrito right now.
Mm.
All right, so let's get into the first part that I want to talk to you about. So your upbringing. You, like you said, your parents got divorced when you were...
I think I was around 7.
7-ish, right? Was that hard?
Yeah, I struggled with it. I don't remember the particular struggles, but I do remember going to the school counselor in probably 3rd or 4th grade. I think it was 3rd grade because I'm trying to remember the building. I think it was 3rd grade, but I spent a little bit of time with the school counselors just trying to navigate all of that. And it was hard. I love my mom now. We have a great relationship now, but for a while we didn't. and she would come in and out of our lives. And my dad never denied us our mother. And so it was hard because she would come in our life and she would like call and say, hey, I'm going to come get you and take you to the zoo tomorrow. And then
make promises. And
and then she would never come pick us up and take us to the zoo. So my dad never sheltered us from that, which I'm sure that was really hard for him. But I think he was trying to allow us to kind of see who she was. I don't really know. I don't understand. Super complicated stuff when you're 7 years old. So It was me trying to work that out and navigate it. And now that I'm older, obviously, I completely understand where he was coming from. He didn't want to influence his opinion of our mother on us. And now that I'm older, I can formulate those opinions for myself. And
which I think is super cool. Like, I have it kind of in the notes to talk to you about this a little bit more later. But just as you're explaining it, I think that, not to condone divorce by any means, especially talking to you, I don't. Divorce is off the table.
What are you trying to tell me?
Making an announcement
on a podcast.
Is this a first ever? No, just kidding. But like, I think divorce in a weird way is kind of, in a weird way, it might be kind of beneficial to a kid, possibly, because it teaches them at a young age that everything's not puppy dogs and unicorns and fairy tale mysteries and stuff that. I don't know. Would you agree with that at all? Like, I don't know. I could see their, like, you learned life lessons at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old.
I did, but those life lessons can also be taught later in life. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be something that a 7-year-old needs to go through. I don't think any child should ever have to go through a divorce to learn these life lessons.
No, obviously, I'm not saying that like psychologists are going to
exactly what you just
said. I'm not saying that psychologists are going to subscribe, hey, for the good of your kid, so they're going to grow up to be resilient. I think you two should go get divorced. Yeah. I don't mean it like that. I just mean like as a byproduct, there is a little bit of resiliency that's learned from that at a young age. Possibly.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. And within that, like, I became a little more self-aware.
How so?
Sort of, and self-reliant, because it was me, my mom, my dad, and my brother, and then all of a sudden it was me, my dad, and my brother.
Right.
And being the older sister, I kind of found myself in situations where I was making my brother lunch because my dad, it was summertime and my dad, was at work and my grandparents hadn't come by to check on us yet. So I feel like that kind of, even though I was like 7 or 8, and that may have been a little bit further down the road, I was kind of thrown into growing up just a little bit faster
than you maybe should have been. So you said that your mom would like kind of come and go at her own convenience. Like, I know your mom now, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but like paint that picture. Like what, obviously you can say crappy mom all day long.
Yeah.
But like, how are those priorities skewed, or like, I don't know, just paint that picture.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to trash talk my mom by any means, but it is what it is. And I know she has a hard time with what she has done, but we are working on that. And we've made leaps and bounds, and our relationship is a lot better than it has ever been in my entire life. So she got pregnant with me when she was 16.
16.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah. She graduated high school when I think, I don't know that she graduated high school actually. I don't really remember, but she told me that she was pregnant with me when she was 16. Right after that, they got married. Not right after I was born, but like there's wedding pictures of my mom and I'm in her belly. I don't know how that all worked out, but she was just really young, and my dad wanted to do the right thing, and he married her up and all that stuff. And he would have stayed with her forever if she hadn't, decided to like rebel, I guess. I don't know. She was young and she didn't know what she was doing. And she just decided that partying and doing what she wanted on her own accord and her own terms was more important than her children and her family. She wasn't the best. I remember a lot of physical fights between my mom and dad when I was growing up. And hindsight now, I can see that it was my dad kind of defending himself and trying to, put out the flames of the situation. But
trying to protect you guys?
Right.
Or
Trying to protect us, trying to
like diffuse it almost?
Yeah, diffuse it. Yeah. Like my mom would come in swinging, and I mean, he has to protect himself. But when you're 8 years old and you see your mom and dad just kind of entangled in fists,
you don't know who's initiating or
right. Yeah, exactly. And my mom, I remember she would try to manipulate us to think that my dad was the bad guy. So I remember certain circumstances taking sides with my mom and like running up and like trying to hit my dad or like push him away or bite him or, whatever I could to help defend my mom. And now that I know what I know, I'm like, ugh, yikes.
Right. And you also, as a parent, you also can see that side of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. But my mom she just wasn't ready to be a parent, and she made a lot of bad decisions and mistakes, and she just took off. She bailed.
Okay. What about your dad? Like, you guys always had a pretty great relationship for the most part-ish?
Yeah, me and my dad have always, obviously growing up, it was rocky. I also rebelled a little bit, and I wanted the nicer shoes and the nicer t-shirts and stuff, and I couldn't understand why my dad just couldn't go buy them. And so, those teenager headbutt things, but nothing like out of the normal.
So we got an idea of your upbringing in general, kind of like what it was like as a kid, and the relationship, how your mom was gone and your dad was more present, but you also had grandparents in the picture and stuff like that helping out. But you said that you and your mom have come leaps and bounds, and you're working on things, and there's definitely a big difference. What does that look like now?
It all kind of started when I was pregnant with Gibson in California. It's taken my mom a very long time to grow up and break her old habits.
How old is she now?
Oh, you had to ask. I used to be really good at this, and now I'm not. She's 51,
okay,
I believe. And then my dad is 55, will be 56 this year.
That's
somewhere around there.
Yeah, early 50s.
Yeah. It's taken her a long time to grow up. I won't get into all the nitty gritty of it, but when I was pregnant with Gibson, she called me in a crisis, as she used to normally do, looking for someone to come in and save her. And that was me at the time. And we were in California, and she was in Missouri, and she was needing money or something like that. And I lost my cool. Hormones and years of anger and frustrations just boiled over, and I said a whole bunch of things to her, a lot of not very nice things, but I told her how it was. I was like, you can't, I'm the daughter, you're the mother. You can't expect me to rescue you all the time. And you can't talk to me the way that you talk to me. Like, you tell me these really private, personal things that I should never know. And you talk to me like I'm your best friend and not like I'm your daughter. And I'm sick of it. And I just went off on her.
Right. I remember that night.
Yeah.
It was, just for anybody that's listening, I don't remember what I was doing.
You were in the kitchen.
I was in the kitchen or something. I was making food or whatever. And I could just, it's like you hear like a tea kettle starting to get to the point where it's about to boil, and you hear that climbing up. I could feel it, the tension in the house. And all of a sudden, like, the lid popped, and you like filled with rage, like an anger I've never seen. And one thing I hadn't really planned on bringing up, but is you're not the most vulnerable person in the entire world.
No, I'm terrible.
You're the worst.
I'm a brick wall.
You're absolutely the worst. Like, just hands down. You're an amazing
I
person.
hate it.
I love you, but you are the worst.
It's extremely uncomfortable for me, and I just don't like to go there. So if I can just not go there, then I'm good. Right.
Yeah. Perfect. Right.
Yeah.
But I could, just the fact that you were able to unleash within, a stone's throw from me, I knew that like this was real. Because even whenever you get into heated arguments with somebody else, you'll like go outside to have your conversation.
Yeah.
Like, you won't stay near me.
Right.
And, I was always like, well, why can't you just sit next to me while she talks to somebody? But it's just, that's like taking just a peek at like the vulnerability situation with you. But I could just feel it. You were about 15, 20 feet away from me, and all of a sudden it popped, and I could just tell it was like the gloves just came off for years.
It was ugly.
And years and years and years of whatever. So, but yeah, so that was kind of like, would you say that was like the beginning of repair, or was there what was that?
Yeah, I would say it was definitely the beginning of repair, but also she was in a really, really awful relationship. I mean, they make movies about relationships this terrible.
So just so we're not depriving and like speaking in too broad of terms, we're dealing with, we're not going to name specific instances, but like some of the genres of things that you're dealing with would be drug and alcohol abuse,
physical abuse, verbal abuse,
sexual abuse,
entrapment,
right?
Hostage situations.
Wasn't there like incestuous things like in his family?
I think so, and he had lost a child when his son was 2. He drowned at the lake. So he had like a whole bunch of baggage anyway to begin with.
And I think that it was pretty easily to, confirm that he was at fault for that. Like,
yeah. For sure. Without a doubt.
It wasn't just like an accident happened and he wasn't.
No, he was partying and his son walked down into the lake and drowned.
So yeah, hopefully that paints enough of a picture that we don't have to retell all these
no.
jillions of stories. There's
not enough time.
Right. It was just a really bad situation, and that's where she was at when this all came to a head.
Right.
Enough was enough.
Yeah.
And then,
so I flipped out on her, and she got away from that relationship, and the healing just kind of started happening. I feel like for the longest time, I was a doormat for her behavior. And I always tried to help her because I felt like I was the only one that could help her. I was the only person that would ever, she would go to my nanny, her mom, and she'd say, no, you're on your own. And my brothers couldn't help her. And of course, my dad's not going to help. And she'd turn to me and I was like, okay, I have to help her. But I would always try to help her in a way that I thought was best, but she didn't agree. Like I would go, hey, go to a women's shelter. They'll help you get a job. They'll help you take care of yourself. And she was above that. Mm-hmm. So it was really difficult for me to like always step in and help her. So when I finally like flipped out on her and told her everything, I felt like I had drawn the line between like, I am your child. I am not your caretaker. I am not your friend. This is my boundary. And if you cross it, we will have problems.
And I think one thing I always kind of hit with you was that I'm a big believer in the idea that I came 90, you came 10. There's a lot of, somebody else has to show some effort for one thing, but then also, you can't continually be a doormat to somebody, but they have to show the effort more than anything. Like that's exactly. The one thing that drives me nuts with the history of the relationship. Like you would constantly go running to her rescue, and it scared me for a long time, I know, because I was just like, is this going to be like...
Yeah, when she shows up at your doorstep bloody, like you're kind of, as a boyfriend, scratching your head going, yeah, oh my gosh.
And
yeah.
There's also that thing of like, they always say like the apple doesn't far too fall from the tree.
Right.
And did I say that right? I feel like
the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
I feel like I said far too fall, but either way.
Maybe.
The apple
sounded right
far,
to me.
Yeah,
the apple, you said it wrong that time.
The apple far does not too fall, tree far, falling. Frumming. But I think I remember thinking that for a little minute, just being a little nervous, but like I always saw just a little something different in you that I knew you didn't want to associate yourself with that.
No.
And unfortunately, I stayed the course. And which brings me to my next point, mm-hmm. which is that we got married mm-hmm. and we decided to have a family. Mm-hmm. And you surprised the ever-living hell out of me as a mother. Not that I expected you to become your mom or anything like that. Obviously I wouldn't have had kids with somebody that I thought was going to...
Wouldn't have even married you.
Right, exactly. But even beyond that, like you are super mom, like hands down, no ifs, ands, or buts. You're grinning and this is that vulnerable moment. You can't do it. I should have made this my first video version just to watch the discomfort.
I'm twitching.
Didn't I ask you at the beginning, can I make you uncomfortable?
Yeah.
I'm going to look you in the eyes as I tell you how great you are.
Nah.
But seriously, like if I was the father that I am and I had anybody else as a mom, our kids would suck. I think you're such a good mom that it allows me to be, I won't say unavailable because I'm not unavailable. I'll go ahead and toot my own horn that I think I'm a good dad.
You're a great dad.
But at the same time, I also give a portion of myself to being driven
Right.
because I have to support this whole monstrosity
Right.
of a family. But I wouldn't be able to be as driven professionally if it weren't for the slack that you pick up, I guess is the best way to say that. Like I was telling my sister last night, I think I told you this, but I told my sister that there are things about our kids I don't even know. Like, I just don't know. I think, like, what's Gibson's teacher's name? I don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a bad dad in that regard.
Yeah.
Given,
I got you.
given I don't live here right now,
Right.
and that's kind of a unique situation. But that's probably a horrible excuse at the same time. But we'll go back to singing your praises as opposed to me, like, tearing myself down.
Oh, but I like that better. Let's take it off of me.
Well, you can do it. Go ahead. Put it on me real quick.
No, I can't.
No, you can't.
I can't
You
because
can
you're a great dad.
Well, I try. I
You
love
are.
It's easy when you love your kids, though. You know, and I say that, but who doesn't love their kids? Well, I guess there are people out there. There's people out there that love themselves more than their kids.
My mom had a phase of it. We just
Right.
talked about someone like that.
Right. So, but anyway, you completely surprised me. You are absolute super mom. You wake up in the morning and that you can tell that is your number one drive and mission in life is to take care of them for one. But you're also like, if you compared it to any other profession in the world, like you want to be the subject matter expert. Like you want to be the best mom ever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to be the best mom ever, but like I don't strive to be the best mom ever. I don't know. Like I just do what I know I need to do.
Because you care.
Because I care. Yeah.
Right.
Like I don't put that pressure on myself to say like I'm the best mom ever because I don't want to get stuck in setting standards for myself that I feel like I can't meet. I just know.
So you don't give yourself any expectations whatsoever.
Not really. I just try to get through the day.
Really?
Yeah. Especially with you being
so
gone.
you mean to tell me that you're just winging it all the time?
Yes. I have no idea what I'm doing. Sometimes I make the stuff up as it's coming out of my mouth.
I've seen that, and some of them have been strokes of genius.
Right.
Like, example, I made a note to bring this up, is one of the things that you did that I thought was just the most brilliant thing in the world. I give you praise for this all the time. You and I we curse. We can't control it. We have potty mouths.
This is correct. I was
Accurate statement.
if you could bleep that out so that it sounded like I said like this is correct, that would be great.
We're trying to keep it a little classy around here. But we have potty mouths.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So going back to what I would praise you for it was like the scene from the movie Old School where Vince Vaughn said, all you got to do is say earmuffs and then you can say anything you want. I got in the car one time and you were cursing and I was like, babe, just the kids. Like, I think I came back from deployment, I think is what it was. I think you picked me up at the airport. You picked me up from deployment, and Presley was like 18 months old, and you were telling me something, and you were cursing, and I was like, that maybe we shouldn't curse around the kid as much, and you said, no, she understands. I told her they're adult words, and I was like, what, that worked? And you're like, yeah, I just told her they're adult words, and you can say anything I want. They know they're not supposed to say it now. I was like, genius, absolute genius, and you pulled that one out of your proverbial backside.
I did.
Just on the spot. Mm-hmm. Absolute genius. I approve it and I support it. But what is your motivation? Do you think that all that history with your mom has motivated you? Are you farting?
No, I was trying to clear my throat, but away from the mic.
Well, I can always edit it out.
Okay, well, I was just trying to make your job easier.
Okay. There it is.
Is that better?
You're ornery too. We'll get on that one later. But no, like, do you think that your motivation for being the mom that you are stems from the mom you had?
Absolutely. I know some people out there have excellent mothers and they're like, I want to be like her when I grow up. I unfortunately didn't have that example. So for me, it was like, I don't want to be anything like that when I grow up. So she was an example by not being an example.
She was a how-to manual.
How not to. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally sometimes like those things. Like my uncle was a a felon drug addict his entire life before he died of a drug overdose, heroin more specifically. And not that I would have ran to heroin, but as a kid, I definitely saw my uncle on heroin at a dinner table do a swan dive into his mashed potatoes and gravy, and then just stayed there for a couple hours after the meal. And I remember associating like the struggles in his life, being kind of in a poverty type situation, living on the wrong side of town, just unkept, torn, tattered lifestyle, in and out of jail and drugs. And that was enough for me to say, I'm not going to try drugs when I grow up, which was crazy for me being, around, the music stuff, like in touring and stuff. There were drugs.
Rock and roll and drugs. Yeah. Hand in hand.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I had friends that got involved in it, but I just, nope, I'm going to go tune my guitars or go make sure there's sufficient tire pressure in the van tires so that we don't die when we go down the road and, stuff like that. So I think those reverse life manuals are kind of interesting. They're invaluable.
And not only that, but my dad was an amazing dad growing up. So,
even you can blend the two.
Yeah. So even though my mom wasn't there and I didn't know, like I knew that I didn't want to be anything like that, I also had my dad being an extraordinary example of what it means to step up and do the right thing and provide and be present. And, I've got memories, I've got pictures of him like doing the slip and slide with us in our front yard as kids. I mean, like he was there, even though he had to work a lot, he was there as much as he could be. And those little memories stuck with me. And like, I remember what it's like having fun with my dad. I want to have fun with my kids too,
Right. And you said that you just wing it with most things.
Yeah.
You're very spontaneous as a parent.
Yeah, I'm not methodical at all.
Right. So I'm completely methodical about just about everything in my entire life.
I know.
So I think it's interesting to see that you're that. And I think the reason I'm methodical about anything is I don't like consequences and I don't like failure. Mm-hmm. I'm methodical about how I enter an intersection because I don't want to get hit.
Yeah.
Some people are more spontaneous and they're like, blindfolded, here we go.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to be so spontaneous with something like parenting because I don't want to screw that up. Like, what is the biggest fear that you associate with being a parent?
Doing it wrong.
Right.
Like
something you did wrong today is going to pay dividends.
I don't want to do anything wrong to like screw my kids up. But at the same time, my moral compass tells me what's right and what's wrong. So I just try to stay the path. Like I'm not going to come home drunk and like wreck my car into the garage in front of my kids because that's wrong.
Setting a bad example.
Yeah, setting a bad example. But I'm not naive enough to think that I won't do things that will bother my children. Maybe not so much now, but when they get older and they're teenagers and we're butting heads, I'm sure we'll have fights that will stick with them for a while and everything. But all I can do is try my best. And at the end of the day, that's going to have to be good enough. Like it just is.
But the thing I like about that is I think you have a very realistic approach. Like I've talked to my sister about the way that she raises her kids versus the way that we raise ours. That I think you opened my mind to parenting because you're super mom. Like you opened my mind to a way of parenting that I probably wouldn't take that approach. Like we just said, you're spontaneous. I'm more methodical. I probably would have been more methodical about every little thing and then ended up being like a total control freak parent. Yeah. Whereas I think your spontaneity has kind of blended it, a little bit of both. I think it kind of it lends itself to each other.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is I think there's a very fine line that's scary in parenting these days that is centric around what you allow your kids to be exposed to.
Yeah.
Like people that are listening to this might judge us, but our 5-year-old son has seen the new It movie.
Yeah.
And it didn't ruin his life,
No, and if it would have bothered him, I would have turned it off.
You'd know where your boundary line is at that point.
Yeah. Part of that comes from being raised by my dad. My dad didn't shelter us. He didn't I mean, I remember Friday night, we would go to the movie theater, or not the movie theater, but the movie store and pick out VHSs to bring home. And I was getting Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that when I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. Like, I'm a horror movie person. And I don't see anything wrong with it personally, because my kids, they know that it's not real.
Right.
It's, and they're going to hear about it anyways from kids at school. And I just would rather the information come from me first so I can tell it how it is. I mean, obviously there is a fine line between that, parenting and keeping it real and, also protecting your children. But I want to be honest. Like, I want to parent the way that I am. Like, I want my kids to know that that's me. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to turn on a different switch when they're not around. Like, who I am in front of my kids is also who I am any other day of the week. Yeah, I'm not two different people. And I think that's important, at least for me, because I want my kids to grow up being who they are around me and being who they are around their friends. I don't want them to put on two different personas.
Right. And I think
in a sense, you know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. So I think I'm just trying to make it a little bit more relatable. So, you make a statement that you don't want them to have two personas, but I think that kind of transcends a lot of things. Number one, selfishly, I don't want my kids to be one person with me and then somebody else with their friends.
Right.
But also, like, the life lesson in that is that they can that they're always true to themselves and they're always real. Like, professionally, in future relationships, like, it's got to be mind numbing, and then I start to think about too, everybody has that question, like, what are you going to do when your kid comes to you and says, I'm gay, or I think I'm a boy, or whatever, even though they are the opposite. Like, Gibson comes to me and says, I think I'm a boy. I'm going to be like, spot on, bro.
Or I'm pregnant, or...
Right. Like, those things, like, I guess I never really thought about it until we became parents together, that, like, I want that later. Like, because I look at, like, these little...
You don't want them to come to you and say they're pregnant.
I want them to be...
You want to be comfortable enough to come and confront you with these huge
I want to be enough of a confidant
yeah.
that they could do that with me. And it's because it's funny, because I don't think a lot of people think about that when they're holding this perfect, tiny, little, innocent, football-sized baby, or whenever they grow up to be 3 years old and Thomas the Train is their hero in life. They don't think what that child is going to be later. And it's kind of like you said, what you do today is going to shape them tomorrow and further on down the road and everything. And I think that's the part where the sheltering thing just it's really important to me personally. I don't want my kids to not know what things are. Like, in a weird way, I feel like I'm a cool dad because I'm okay to tell them that. What was it? Yesterday we were in the car, and so our kids know what suicide is.
Right.
Like, they're not stupid to that, but we're not giving them a manual on ways to perform suicide.
Right. And I think it's important to talk to kids about suicide. You can't, like, sidestep it, because kids are getting younger and younger. You have 8-year-olds. I mean, Presley's 8. You have 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds committing suicide.
It's crazy.
You can't sidestep an issue that big. You just can't. I can't risk it.
Right. But yesterday, what was it Presley said? Like, we were talking about some musician or somebody recently.
We were talking, so we were at the store and Gibson took off to go look at a magazine. And I told him, you cannot be taking off like that. There are snatchers here. And he was like, well, I don't care if I get snatched. And I was like, actually, you will, because snatchers will do terrible things to you. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go.
We
were talking about Ariel Castro. It segued into that.
So, yeah, giving a little bit backstory. So, when we lived in Japan, safest place in the world, like, nobody gets hurt, nobody gets robbed, nobody gets kidnapped. Like, it's very common for us to, like, walk through a mall and our kids be 45 feet behind us, and we don't really have to think about it. It is the most beautiful. It's like a false economy almost. It's just like, and it's not fake though. Like, it's totally true. Their society is so safe. But moving back to America, we had to kind of prepare our kids. Again, we want to be very transparent with them. So we told them, hey, when we get back to America, you got to stay close. You got to be aware of what's going on. In the event that somebody were to grab you, here's what we want you to do to react, because they weren't wired or programmed to grow up thinking like that. But we had to help kind of train and change that line of thought. So this is all new to them. And now that we live back in America, and we said, like Lacey said, Gibson took off at the store and she went looking for him. She couldn't find him. He was only gone for maybe 10, 15 seconds, but that's all it usually ever takes. Right. And, so we were trying to instill in him, hey, don't run off like that. That's you could get snatched up. The term that we use is snatched up. And, then Gibson said, I don't care if I get snatched up. They'll be nice to me. And we said, no, they won't. This is him testing the boundary as to what getting snatched up is. So we try to explain to him, you always jump to the worst one, right? You don't say, well, sometimes when people get snatched up, they smack you on the face for 2 minutes and then they let you out of the car and it's over.
Right.
No, we went straight to Ariel Castro. Was
yeah.
His name? Yeah. And if you're not familiar with the Ariel Castro story, Google it, look it up. This guy was the worst monster in the entire world, and he imprisoned 3 girls for like almost 12 years or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Yeah.
He had them conceive his children, by rape and things like that. Deliver his kids. I think he aborted a couple, but I think when she was released,
I think there was one
baby, even
something
still.
like that.
I mean, shackled to like a basement floor for years and years and years. And anyway, this guy finally got caught, thank God, and went to prison. And I asked Lacey, I was like, whatever happened to that guy? Like, has he been tried yet? And she said, oh, no, he killed himself. So taking this back 20 minutes. Sorry. So like I said, the kids are aware of what suicide is. We're not going to hide that from our kids. We're not going to sit around and just talk about puppy dogs and unicorns all day with them.
We're not going to give them the directions on how to do it, but yeah, we're not going to hide the fact that it is a thing.
Right. And I think Presley asked, how did he kill himself?
Right.
Or I asked the question. I said, how did he kill himself? Because I knew he was in jail. And Lacey said, he hung himself.
Right.
And Presley from the back of the car goes, what does that mean to hang yourself? What do you mean hung himself? And that's something I just didn't want to explain. She's not ready to know that.
No.
Because that could,
it could spin ideas in her head. I mean, you don't know. That's why you don't give directions. But it was so cute because Gibson goes, oh, I think I know what it means. He washed his clothes and then he hung them up.
Right.
And that's like, so in the same, like it reminded me and brought me back to like, okay, like it's important to talk about certain things, but like you don't have to completely pull back the curtains.
You got to maintain
because
some
Gibson
innocence.
still has, they still have that innocence. Like, so I'm not gonna, what's that scene from that Bird Box where he like they hold their eyeballs open? Like I'm not gonna do that to my kids, but I'm also not gonna blindfold them.
Exactly. And I appreciate that about you, that we have that in common. Because I think there's some parents out there that I want to say that fortunately, none of our friends, most of our friends were kind of like equally yoked in that regard. Like our friends Rob and Erica, like they don't hide anything from their kids and stuff like that. But there is a boundary, and I think everybody knows where that boundary is. Yeah. But I think there's somebody I was working with, and I think he ended up getting divorced, but because they couldn't see eye to eye on that. Like he would always talk trash on his wife, and instead of it being about the kid, then it was more about the differences that he had between him and his wife.
Right.
So,
well, and going back to that real quick, I was raised very liberal, so to speak, and I have friends that were raised fairly conservative, sheltered. And then they get to the age where they have a little bit of freedom and they typically go hog wild. Not everybody, but all of my friends that were raised pretty sheltered say that they wish they weren't. And that even though their parents were trying to shelter them from certain things, they would go to school and they would hear about Mary Jane blowing coke in the bathroom. And, slowly but surely those things get found out anyway. Mm-hmm. So all you're doing is dragging out the process, prolonging the inevitable.
I think the way that the verbiage that you've chosen to explain this in the past was perfect, is that I want to tell the kids my perception of that reality versus them hearing it from somebody else.
All right.
If somebody came to my kid at school and said, hey, here's some cocaine, you should do it. It's a ton of fun. If I had cocaine in my hand, I wouldn't say, you should do it. That's a ton of fun. I would say, this stuff will ruin your life.
Right.
So it's a version of what's it called? It's the perspective and the perception of that reality. I want to give them our family's values on those realities.
And I want them to be comfortable enough to come to me with these types of things. So it's all kind of like full circle. Like, I don't hide who I am. I do what I do. I try to be open and honest within reason with my kids so that they can come back to me, so I can be a shelter in the storm, like all these things are going on. Who can I seek refuge to? Oh, mom.
You're the safe haven.
Yeah.
Right. And I hadn't mentioned it yet, but my mom passed away 3 weeks ago, and I'm dealing with that now at 37. Like, there's things that I would call my mom about all the time. Like, just, hey, like, whether it just be to brag on something that I accomplished or something the kids accomplished or whatever. Like, I had that trust with my mom to be, to go to her with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And like, I want my kids at, Gibson's 5 and Presley's 8, at 5 and 8, all the way up to, when I go, I want them to have that approach with me. And I know that's a priority to you too.
Right.
So
exactly.
I think it has only made our marriage stronger, which brings me to our final point. Which actually doesn't necessarily, I guess, marriage, spouse, I'm tying them together. I found the connection. So, anybody that's listening to this might know that I'm active duty Air Force, and Lacey is not in the military, but I would argue she is because, well, no. Hang on. We got to draw this picture. We got to make a distinction here.
Oh, boy.
Let me now introduce my dependopotamus wife. Just kidding.
Stop that.
So a military spouse is one of the most difficult jobs in the world, and I want to get your perspective on that. However, we have some strong beliefs on this, don't we? Mm-hmm. Okay, so for those of you not affiliated with the military, there are 3 kind of spouses, maybe two or 3. Let's call it 4. I'll paint the picture. Here we go. So there are 4 types. There are amazing spouses like my wife, who rises to the occasion to face the challenges that are associated with my career to better our family, and they're just resilient in that capacity, and they're great mothers, they're great spouses, they're great friends to their friends, and yeah, knocking it out of the park, 100%. Another breed, typically with commissioned officers' wives, are all those things that I mentioned for Lacey, but they have kind of a like a politician's wife kind of figure associated with them, where they get involved in the dealings of the social aspect of their husband's career.
They drink the Air Force Kool-Aid.
Right. And they actually, in some capacities, they get sent to classes to be taught, protocol and things like that, so that they can rise to that occasion.
Right.
No, there's no shame in that. I think it's part of the role of that level. Mm-hmm. And then there are the other folks, there is dependopotamus, which typically, if you Google it, is a heavy-set woman who is a leech for any and all benefits associated with her husband or their wife. I guess you could have flip-flop dependopotamuses.
They can do that now. Yep.
Anything that they can do to leech onto their association with what their spouse does, to include naming themselves by their spouse's rank.
We
are like, oh, your husband, where does he work? Oh, he works over at that squadron. Cool. How long has he been in? 10 years?
We've been in 10 years.
And then they start answering things as, we've been in 10 years.
We just tested for rank.
we just made a new rank. And those are dependopotamus. Then there is the dependosaurus. I think there's a difference. So dependosaurus is, they're the know-it-all, and they're angry about it. They just don't acclimate to military life, and they're rebellious against what's going on in the military. We've known a couple.
That's a new one, but yeah, I do know.
Well, I've heard this term dependosaurus and dependopotamus, and I think in some circles they're the same.
Yeah.
But
you have the ones that just aren't about it. They don't agree. They're just not the type of personality to conform anyway. And then you try and put them in that kind of environment, and yeah, they just don't agree.
Okay. So we have that. And Lacey is the top echelon perfect military spouse.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
So do you think that you feel like any need to defend any sort of stigma whenever you tell people, oh, my husband's in the Air Force? Probably not when we lived in Japan because everybody else was affiliated with the military, but like to civilian friends or anything like that, do you think there's a stigma that follows military spouses?
I mean, there probably is, but I don't fit into that box, so it doesn't faze me, so I don't care.
Do you think
like I don't ever find myself defending myself because of your career?
Okay. I guess that's one way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't feel like that we're lesser.
No.
Because of that.
No.
Do you think that we're better off in any way, shape, form, or fashion, or capacity, or anything like that?
I mean, it works for us. I'm not going to say I'm better off because you're in the Air Force, but I know what works for us, and this is it, and that's why we're here. I will say it's hard explaining things to my civilian friends, but they try their best to understand, and I don't think I'm above them, and they don't think they're above me, and they genuinely just don't, like, it's two different worlds, you know?
Right. So that helps also draw the line in the distinction, further proving that you are not a dependopotamus or a dependosaurus because you don't think you're better than anybody. It is different. It's just
that's
different.
not true.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think I'm better than a lot of people for sure.
Better than most.
I mean, I probably shouldn't admit it, and people are going to think I'm terrible, but like really deep down, sometimes, yeah, I think I'm better than people.
Yeah.
And I know I'm better than some people.
But not because of the military.
Right. It's just because I'm better.
I'm just better. Across the board.
It's terrible, but that is a personality trait of mine. Like
No, I'm the same way.
I can tell if I'm better than someone or not.
I'm too good for that. We're too good for that.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a pride thing in our family.
Yeah.
We were looking at cars.
I know my
day.
worth.
Yeah, we were looking at cars the other day, and I think I heard you say it a few times. We're too good for that.
Yeah, probably.
And that's cars. So
Yeah.
only just imagine everything else.
Yeah.
Primarily around dirty people. I can't stand dirty people.
I mean,
like when you walk in their house and their house smells like cat piss, I can't stand it.
There's a difference between like filth and clutter, though. You know what I mean?
Clutter's clutter. I kind of am embracing a little bit more of a minimalist kind of idea with this nice big house that we have now. But just overall filth is gross, and
it's not for me, right? For sure. And some people, are dirty, and that's cool, and that's their thing, but it's not for me. I like a clean. I'm very A-type in that sense that like everything has a place. It needs to be in its place. It gives me comfort. It gives me peace.
like I'm getting to the point that I don't like the fact that things that are supposed to be dirty in your life are dirty, like a broom. Old me would sweep something up and see all the dust bunnies gathered on the broom and say, at least they're not on the floor anymore. Now I'm the guy that goes and sweeps something up, and then I have to clean off the broom before I can put it away.
I've always been a broom person because you will go mow the yard and you will take my indoor broom from my floors and go sweep the back patio with outdoor things with my indoor broom.
It does a better job.
Oh, but
you need
to buy your own outdoor broom.
I did, and you told me it sucks.
It does.
You're right.
It's terrible. So go buy yourself a different outdoor broom.
I can't tell you what broom we have.
See, everything has a place and a use, and I like order.
Right. I can't tell you, those of you who are listening, I can't tell you what broom we own for the outside, but I can't recommend enough that you not buy it. If you go to Lowe's and you find the one, I think it's yellow bristles and a yellow long handle.
It just looks like a big utility broom.
It's around $25. Steer clear like the Black Plague. Pick any other one. It just sucks. It doesn't push anything.
Right.
But okay, so bring it back to the military spouse thing. Are there any strengths or skills that you learned because of being affiliated with this lifestyle that you're like aware of? Like if I hadn't joined the military or you hadn't married me and, been affiliated with the military in any way, shape, form, or fashion, skills that you feel like you wouldn't have learned otherwise?
Not entirely. I feel like I already kind of had the skills. I have just had the ability to develop them a little bit more.
Exercise them.
Yeah, exercise them a little bit more. I've always kind of been a fly by the seat of my pants, go with the flow kind of person, especially when you don't have a choice. It's better to go with than against. In the military, you find yourself in that situation a lot where you are in a position that you do not like. And are you going to decide to dwell in it and try and push back? Or are you just going to make the best of it and go with the flow?
Like, I keep bringing up my sister, and Amy, if you're listening to this, I'm not talking badly about you by any means. I'm just saying, like, you are in a different situation than me. So, example, I think I just counted up 4, 5, 6. I have been in 10 years, and we have lived in 7 houses. Actually, 8 if you count the apartment that we had in Wichita Falls, Texas. 8 residences in 10 years. That's nuts. 2 deployments, lots of time away, all those types of things. To some civilians, not all, that concept of that is, why would you let them tell you to do that? Run for the hills, get out. If they told me, like my sister has said on several times, if they told me that I had to move like that, I would just get out.
It's easy for a civilian to say that because they don't understand the benefits of the lifestyle as well.
Right. There are benefits that are huge. I'm not going to turn this into a recruiting thing.
No.
But if anybody is looking for a new career opportunity, please let me know, and I will tell you the good, bad, and the ugly associated with this way of life. But I think I always look at, maybe it's just because I'm maturing and I'm looking at, like, from a supervisory aspect, that when somebody joins the military and they have a spouse, like, that person, they're joining too inadvertently. Yeah, they don't have to deal with getting promoted and stuff, but you do. I bring it home all the time, and I bitch and complain about the politics associated with it. And it went from me coming home and having to explain every single acronym, having to spell them all out to...
You didn't have to.
I can speak to you in acronyms now, and you know exactly what I'm saying.
But you didn't have to explain those things to me. I asked.
But I also wanted you to know.
Right.
Like, there are a lot of people that are like, my wife doesn't need to know.
I don't want to be ignorant to it. I mean, it is a big part of our life. If someone says, hey, you're going to Cannon Air Force Base, I want to know where that's at.
No, you don't.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go there, but I want to know these.
You're better off just not knowing.
Right. I want to know these things. And so, I want to be educated. And when you say that, being a military spouse is the hardest job in the military, I hate that because I'm not in the military. I'm not. I married you before you joined the military. We made the decision for you to join together.
Right.
I'm along for the ride, but I am not.
You're not in it, but you're wildly affected by it.
I am.
Like, if you had it your way, we probably would have stayed in Omaha forever. But fortunately, we did move and we got to go experience Japan. And if you had it your way again, you'd probably stay in Japan forever.
Yeah, I definitely would get out of Louisiana.
And I was just going to take it there.
To all the listeners out there, no offense, but this state blows.
Timestamp. Hold on. We got to timestamp this. 18 April 2019. Watch her just pull a full 180 and love it eventually.
Right now, I don't like it. The South just isn't, it's not my thing yet.
But that's a perfect example of you are wildly affected by it. Other one too was you're pursuing your own career, and I come home from work one night and I say, I just got orders to Japan, and you have to completely course correct. Those are things like...
Right, but it's not my job. Don't define me by...
But it limits you.
But your military career doesn't define...
But as long as you stay with me... I'm not trying to talk you out of leaving me or talk you out of staying with me. Stay with me forever, please, okay? But you're not able to necessarily follow your own dreams and passions because of your affiliation. So I would say you're affected.
Yeah. There's a lot of detours.
And I have the same thing.
Yeah.
I can't go do what I want to do for a living because this is what I do and it takes up all my time. Just the same as you can't go do some things that you want to do.
Right.
Because you're affiliated with me.
Right.
So for that regard, I think that's That's asking a lot of somebody.
It is.
Like my nephew.
But don't call it my job.
Why? You're really getting hung up on that.
I just don't like that saying at all. It's not my job. I do it because I love you and we're married and we're in it together, but it's not my job.
Right. But okay. So fine. So we have to find a new way, and then we'll move on and we'll end this whole thing. But we have to find a new title for you. It's not your job. I want to coin a phrase that we can say to everybody when they say, she's got the hardest job in the Air Force.
That's not necessary.
And I can correct them and I can say, correction. It's not the hardest job. It's the...
No, that's not necessary.
Most affected affiliation with the Department of Defense. How's that sound?
Yeah, write that down.
No. Now you're just patronizing me.
I'm not.
But we are out of time this time.
But wait, I want to say something really quick about the whole military thing and rolling with the punches and kind of all that. And it's a saying that I use quite a bit. So as soon as you probably already know where I'm going with this anyway.
I really don't.
You don't?
Actually,
Wow.
You're about to surprise me.
I am. No, I won't. As soon as it comes out of my mouth, it'll be like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Duh.
But in this moment, I have no idea.
This is kind of how this is kind of how I try to live my life in every aspect. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
That's beautiful.
It's true.
It is true.
You know, it's all about your attitude. And if you're going to have a crap attitude, you're going to have a crap time. And that's why, I mean, I know Louisiana sucks, but I always say it with like, Louisiana sucks, but it has the potential to get better. And I try to find positive things, and I try to not compare Japan to Louisiana because it's impossible. They're not even the same, but sometimes I find myself doing that. But again, Louisiana is 10% of what's happening to me right now. So I'm trying to make my 90% all about my attitude and try to be positive. Which,
to bring everything completely full circle, I think that's one of the most attractive things about you, that you find that you're able to brush off the bad days and focus that tomorrow can be better, because I think it stems from a lot of your experiences. Yeah. Just because you had a less than stellar, perfect picture book childhood, then you were able to see that your life has actually turned out kind of great.
Yeah.
And, finding that appreciation. And I think everybody can benefit from that. So thank you for your time. Mm-hmm. Thank you for spending your life with me. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being so damn hot. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's that. Her eyes.
You're welcome.
Her eyes dodged down. She can't take a compliment. Can't be vulnerable. But you'll be back and we'll talk about deeper issues. Now we've painted the picture of who you are and a framework. And I think this gives you a green light to really stand up for your beliefs. Oh. So next time I'm going to hit you with difficult questions that you're going to have to answer, like, why are you so hot?
Stop.
End of story. I love you.
I love you.